Roll call, Commissioner Kai,
Here.
Commissioner Widola,
Here.
Commissioner Giles,
Here.
Commissioner Harsh,
Here.
and Commissioner Simpson. So our first item on the agenda is the comprehensive plan update.
Well, I'm going to turn this right over to Anais this evening, and she's just going to get into the details.
Okay, thanks. I'm going to share my screen here. It looks like I can do that. One moment.
I hate to interrupt, but could I get a quick introduction of who you are, Anais?
Oh, I'm sorry. We have two new planning commissioners.
Yes, please introduce me.
So Anais, we have Taylor, and then we have Mike, and then would the two of you like to introduce yourselves? Taylor, let's start with you.
Sure. I'm Taylor Giles. I lived in Sherwood for, about 17 years now. I was born in Portland, grew up in Palo Alto, California, and I am a software designer by training, and I mostly work in the healthcare space for that. I'm super excited to be on the Planning Commission.
Excellent. It's really nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well.
And I'm Mike Harsh. I've been in Sherwood almost 20 years. Grew up in Canada, actually, but dual citizen.
Whereabouts?
Victoria, BC. I lived all over the country. I was an Army officer up there. I lived all over the country. I'm a solutions architect. I work in tech. I'm a really senior nerd with social skills. Just the best way to describe what I do. So yeah, nice to meet you. What do you do, Anais?
Yeah, so I'll quickly introduce myself. I'm sorry for the mix-up there. So my name is Anais Mete. I am a land use planner and a community engagement specialist. And I work for a consulting firm called 3J Consulting. And we do primarily land use planning, some civil engineering as well, a whole range of disciplines all over both the metro region and across Oregon. I've been doing planning now for the last 5 or 6 years. I went to the PSU program. I'm originally from the East Coast, and I have been working with the city of Sherwood actually for a number of years. Started working here with city staff when we first pulled together the preliminary concept plan for Sherwood West. So have been familiar with your community for a little while now, and we've been running the comprehensive plan update process. Now it's been about, oh goodness, we're about 8 months in, maybe more than that, maybe a year in. I'm not quite sure. We'll take a look at the schedule in a moment. But yeah, and then prior to that, we also worked through the visioning process for the comp plan in 2018. So that's my role here. Erica, do you want me to kind of kick us off and give us a lay of the land, or do you have anything to add?
Before you start, Jean has another question to the group, and unfortunately, she does not have the little raise your hand feature.
Okay.
So I'll let her.
So that was actually where I was going to go with this. When I was trying to get set up with Mark, we were remembering from last meeting that there were commissioners that had the feature and did not. So we were going to need to take a poll of who has the raise the hand feature. So Commissioner Kai, do you have the raise the hand feature?
I do not.
Okay. Commissioner Widola, do you have the raise the hand feature?
I do not.
Commissioner Giles?
I do have it.
Commissioner Harsh?
Yes, ma'am. I've got it.
Commissioner Holm?
Nope.
And Commissioner Giles and Harsh, since you said yes, do you by chance happen to use Microsoft Teams through your workplace and have a different version that you log in through?
Yes, ma'am. I've got the full-blown desktop. Are you using the web app by chance?
I'm using an installed app. I'm using the installed version, but not through a logged in version. It's the free app. So
maybe that's a differentiator. Yeah, that or a Mac. Yeah. Are you on
Yeah.
a Mac?
okay,
No,
so
I'm on a PC, but I'm using my work version as well.
Yeah.
okay, and you guys are showing up as guests, so I think that may be the deciding factor. So since we mostly don't have,
I think it's because I've joined it with an email address that is, I'm using my Gmail address. I'm not using my city address because I haven't gotten it yet. So as soon as I get my city address, then I'm sure I'll be able to join it with those credentials.
And that was the challenge, is because the city of Sherwood credentials do not authorize us to have the full version of Teams.
That's correct.
And so that's what I came in to the understanding of,
Right.
A matter of 15 minutes ago. So since we don't all have the ability to raise hands, we're going to have to use the meeting chat. If someone has a question, just type something in the message box there and we'll monitor it that way. Thank you very much. All right.
Yeah.
We're back to good.
All right, sounds good. So I'm gonna just share my screen here. And as Jean said, I'm happy to keep my eye on the chat box, but I will be just kind of running through a lot of information. So if Joy or Erica, you see something pop up, just please let me know. Okay, one moment, let me see. Here we are. Can everybody see my screen? Yeah,
yes.
Okay,
Yep.
Excellent. Sorry, I'm playing with dual monitors here, so I have you guys on one screen and then my presentation on another, so I'm sorry if my eyes are going in different ways, but I'm paying attention. I'm here tonight to just give you an update on all of the work that's been going on for the comprehensive plan update. For the new planning commissioners, have you gotten an update or a project status on what we're doing at the comprehensive plan? I'm going to be giving a little overview of the project overall, but I just want to know kind of where we're starting. Have you heard of the comprehensive plan update? Yeah, okay, excellent. Just don't always know where we are exactly. So here we go. We have been doing a number of, I'm sorry, where can I? There we go. So a little update on exactly what the work plan is for the comprehensive plan update. A couple of years ago, the city staff set this project up. As I mentioned, we had a community-wide visioning process that occurred in 2018. And this was kind of the background or the framework for gearing ourselves up to update the comprehensive plan. At the same time, a number of background and technical documents were being updated, notably the economic opportunities analysis, the housing needs analysis, all sorts of other technical reports that are necessary when you update your comprehensive plan. But we are currently in phase 4, so the drafting of the update to your comp plan. For just a quick reminder, hasn't been done since 1990, so there's quite a bit of work to do in terms of revamping the language in your comprehensive plan. So that's where we are now. Through the visioning process in 2018, we came across a whole slew of different concepts and community priorities, everything ranging from economic development to housing to transportation and infrastructure, to ecosystems, connected trails, etc. So all of those came together under an overarching vision statement as well as a series of goals. And we basically identified 6 core concepts or 6 core blocks. And that has really been the framework for the scoping of our comprehensive plan. So generally in Oregon, comprehensive planning kind of follows the formula of statewide planning goals 1 through 19. But a lot of communities like yourselves have actually been kind of reorganizing their comprehensive plans around community priorities, all while addressing the statewide planning goals as well. But just kind of a little bit of a reorganization of your comp plan, so it's a little bit more tailored to the community and the priorities of your community. So this really this influences the policy direction. It helps establish the types of questions we want to be asking ourselves as we update our comprehensive plan policies. So this whole visioning process is really powerful in that it provides the framework for policy direction of your comp plan. So as I said, we have 6 blocks. We are currently in the 4th block, which is why I'm here tonight. I'm going to give you an update on what we've done in this 4th block, which is housing. For every block, we have a bit of an iterative process. So we pull together all the background information we have about the state of affairs of this particular topic. Then we meet with our community advisory committee and we meet with our technical advisory committee to go over all that background information and start developing some key policy questions or considerations we want to ask of our different groups, but then also the broader public. Then where it says theme conference, this is really an engagement and outreach activity of some sort. They are all tailored to the different comprehensive plan blocks that we're working through. From that information, along with a bunch of different inputs, we start drafting new and updated policy language that is a reflection of the engagement and the outreach we did, that is a reflection of the conversations we had with you guys, with our CAC, with our TAC, and other stakeholder groups. We have often been pushing those that draft policy language for a particular concept or chapter out onto an online survey. So basically publicizing that information and getting feedback on a lot of this draft language. We come back to our CAC and our TAC with that information. We review our draft goals and policies and objectives and see if they align with the feedback we've been getting. And then we go and present that information to a joint planning commission and city council meeting so that you guys and city council are kept abreast at every step of the process. In addition to meeting with you guys halfway through, you are the first group to kind of get the first look at the draft goals and policies for each block of our comp plan. This is an updated schedule. I'm sorry if it's small, and I'm happy to share this in a larger format, but essentially it's just kind of showing the scope of this. So you'll see in the smaller tasks, we are working through 6 blocks. We're in the 4th one. We'll be wrapping this up early fall and then kicking ourselves off into the next block, kind of overlapping a little bit and working around transportation and infrastructure as our next topics, starting in September, October, and taking us through the end of the year. And the comprehensive plan should be wrapping up early to mid next year. So as you recall, I mentioned kind of the strategy of reorganizing a comprehensive plan around community priorities rather than statewide planning goals, rather than chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is simply a little kind of easy crosswalk matrix where these are the 6 comprehensive plan blocks that we're working through on the left side, and then just the topic areas that they kind of cover, and then what statewide planning goals they reference essentially. So we just know that we're covering all of our bases, both legally and then also community-wide. Does anybody have any questions before I just move on to the meat of our meeting here? No? Okay. I'm seeing the meeting chat. So there's a lot of information that you received in your planning, in your packets last week. My hope for this evening is to do 2 things. I want to go over all of the engagement activities that we did for the housing block in the last couple of months. And then I also want to review the draft housing policies that have been created as a result of a bunch of different inputs. So there's a lot of material to go through. I'm thinking what I'd like to do is run through all the community engagement work. There's 3 separate sections to that effort, and then maybe after that we can talk about any questions you might have, and then move on to the draft policy language, and then talk about that just for meeting time's sake. Okay, so this comprehensive plan block was essentially, the vision statement was around attractive and attainable housing. So through the visioning process, the vision statement read as, by 2040, Sherwood will aim to develop a range of housing choices for a diversity of ages and income levels, providing community members the ability to live in Sherwood throughout all stages of life. So that was the community-wide vision that came up for housing during our 2018 process. Out of that came 3 goal statements, which is kind of the framework for how we're going to review and update our policy language. So the first goal is about providing the opportunity for a variety of housing types in locations and at price points that meet the needs of current and future residents. Goal 2 is preserving and enhancing the character of existing neighborhoods. And then goal 3 is planning new residential developments to integrate with existing Sherwood as complete neighborhoods where community members can live, learn, shop, and recreate. So this is kind of where we started and what we started working with. Well, when we pulled together our background information, we reviewed our housing needs analysis, which I understand you have been reviewing with a lot of effort. We identified some key policy questions and considerations that we wanted to have to help guide the conversations we wanted to have both with the community and then also among our CAC and our TAC. So the first type of question we wanted to ask ourselves was, where should Sherwood consider providing this wider range of housing types? And what types of housing should Sherwood be planning for? The second policy question we asked ourselves was, how much of Sherwood's needed housing should the city plan to accommodate within city limits? And how much of that needed housing is going to be in the Berkman area or Sherwood West? And then finally, what are the design features or the neighborhood principles that would really be important to consider when we talk about developing new housing? So what are those standards that would help keep Sherwood feeling like Sherwood? So these are the key questions that guided our thinking and our conversations, as well as our engagement and our outreach activities. So as I noted, we did 3 kind of major things for this block. Housing kicked off in May, so we are definitely deep into our COVID-19 era of kind of thwarted hopes and dreams around public involvement. But we did not despair. We went out and kind of had this 3-pronged approach to our engagement around this topic, also with the understanding that housing, we know, is a very important topic and a very heated one in Sherwood. So we did 3 things. So the first thing we did is we conducted a series of stakeholder interviews. This was with a broad variety of folks. This was with all of your planning commission members, your city councilwomen and men, along with a bunch of housing advocates and folks that work within the housing realm in some capacity, whether it be realtors, builders, community organizations in Sherwood and locally in the area. So we had 20 stakeholder interviews. The second thing we did is we launched a housing needs and preferences online survey. So this was a different survey than what we've done in other comprehensive plan blocks. It was a little bit lengthier, it was a little bit more interactive, but essentially it was it was an effort to try and understand the broader desires and needs around housing and what's working now and what do people want to see in the future. And then finally, the third thing that we did is what we've been calling a housing snapshot storyboard, which essentially takes the stakeholder interviews and the online survey just a step further. And that was where we got into some more in-depth one-on-one interviews with folks about what exactly their experience was around accessing housing, staying within housing, the kind of options they had for aging in place, et cetera, within the community or within Sherwood. So really it's about just collecting as many stories as possible to help support the data that you have through your housing needs analysis. So through all of those 3 activities, your packet basically summarizes a lot of that information. There's a lot of stuff on your screen here, but essentially nothing is new. It's all in your packet as well. But I just wanted to briefly touch upon our stakeholder interviews. This is just a reminder of the list of folks that we spoke to, and just also an FYI that these interviews were a really collaborative effort. We had our community advisory committee also conducting these interviews and suggesting folks to talk to. So this was a really great exercise for all of us to do together. And then for our housing needs and preferences, this was a very active survey. You got over 1,000 survey responses, which is really great. And this was an excellent kind of first look at what residents' current experience is or with housing in Sherwood and how housing might look like in the future. I just plopped on the screen some kind of current housing experience trends from the survey as well as future housing needs. So this was kind of an interesting, it's your key takeaways section in your document that you have, but I just want to put it up there in case you hadn't seen that yet.
Hey, I have a quick question.
Please, yes.
The in-person sessions, what was the format of those, and how were the invites sent out? I sometimes go to those and I see that I'm, one of 10 people or so, and so I'm just wondering about the in-person ones.
So are you talking about the stakeholder interviews or the housing? Sorry?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So the stakeholder interviews were all conducted by phone or video conference. And essentially what we started with is a list of categories of interests or areas of expertise. The city staff and both the project team, we kind of collaborated on pulling together a list of the interest groups. And then we started identifying folks that would be good representatives of those interest groups. We also brought that list and those contacts to our citizen advisory committee, our technical advisory committee, and then our project advisory team. And they were able to provide us either categories that seemingly were missed or other contacts that could help flesh out some of those representations. And then based on that list, Erica did the good job of reaching out to lots of folks and presenting the request for essentially an interview. And then we shared those interview questions with them ahead of time and then conducted the interview by phone. And so what you have in your packet is a summary of all of those interviews by questions that we asked, and then also the appendix of all the raw notes that we took during those conversations.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Finally, we have this housing snapshot. So the housing snapshot, it's also in your packet, but basically our hope here is that while data-informed decision-making is crucial, we have to remember that housing begins and ends with people, and we were really interested to just try and continue in the spirit of stakeholder interviews and push it out to a little bit more of a personal thing and have a collection of more personal stories around housing. So this is kind of it's more of an informative, exploratory exercise that is really just kind of the beginning of the tip of the iceberg, essentially. But this was our first shot at collecting more personal stories and understanding really what the landscape of housing is in Sherwood. Does anybody have any questions about any of those outreach activities, either how they were conducted, any of the feedback we heard? Yeah, open ears. All right, well, let me know if you have any questions and we can always go back to anything. But I'm just gonna move us along and just kind of show the bridge between all of this outreach and engagement that we did and now the draft policy language that we pulled together based on this information and some other sources as well. So this is also, once again, in your packet. So my apologies in advance if there's a lot of text on the screen. I just wanted to have it in front of you in case you didn't have your packet in front of you. But essentially, in terms of updating the housing chapter of your comprehensive plan and just having it more reflective of the input that we were getting. We reviewed a number of documents and got information that was already starting to be pulled together, and that comes from your housing needs analysis. It comes from reviewing your current comprehensive plan policies. It comes from all of the synthesis of the information we were getting from the outreach and engagement we did around this block, and then also comes from the vision and the goal statements that were developed through significant engagement with the community 2 years ago. So these are all the inputs that we pull together and think about critically as we start looking to update some of the language and the policies and the objectives for your housing chapter. So I will say that the two like really important kind of framework pieces was one, your current comprehensive plan policies is always a great place to start. What do you guys have now? But secondly, your housing needs analysis, oftentimes the second part to an H&A is a housing needs analysis or a strategy or action plan. So that was already kind of in the works, or there was some information that was being pulled together upon the completion of that technical report of the housing needs analysis. So there was quite a bit of fodder there that we could then cross-reference with your current comp plan, and then also make sure that it was reflection of the engagement we were getting from our stakeholder interviews and our surveys and all of our other outreach. So
Anais.
Yeah, please, Jean.
So my comment, what I mistyped, misspelled in my typing, was that this is pages 35 and 36 in our packet, and these 2 pages are the 2 pages of text that we will be discussing and recommend to council during our hearing process. So
yeah,
we will see this language again as it comes to hearing, but this is an opportunity for the commission to raise concerns at the beginning part of the process so that the CAC and other members can join in the community conversation before it becomes a final document.
Yeah, entirely. Yeah, so this is the first crack at updated language for the housing component of your comprehensive plan. So we're going to be reviewing it together as a group tonight, and then we'll be taking your comments, your suggestions, any of your ideas, and folding that into this draft, and then presenting that information to our CAC and our TAC in about a few weeks from now. So we'll be going through multiple revisions. And then we'll also be coming back to a joint planning commission and city council work session where you will be able to see what those revisions look like since we last spoke tonight. And then you will see it once more during the adoption proceedings next spring as well.
So Mike, I think the answer to your question, it's the page 35, 36 of the information that Erica just sent out this week for this meeting.
Okay.
And my page 1 is the agenda for tonight.
Yep.
And if I could, we have 2 commissioners that are new, and I don't know if, I know Alex isn't here, but I don't know if the other commissioners have been through a process that puts together the big pieces of what a comprehensive plan means to a planning commissioner as it goes through a hearings process, or how that relays into decisions regarding zone change. So as a sidebar, maybe when we get done, we can see, these 2 pages are, to me, really critical, because as we go forward in land use decisions and in making policy statements about how we're going to be zoning our community or rezoning our community, we will be using these both as a commission and citizens that want to come in and apply for changes or admission into our community. They use these objectives and goals to say to us why they believe their plan is going to fit into our community when plan use developments come in. So a lot of the survey questions feed into it, but the last 2 pages is what we have to vote on. So
okay, thank you.
That's a great overview, Jean. And so just to quickly reiterate, a reminder that a comprehensive plan is definitely at the 30,000 foot level, and the zoning and development code, those are essentially the implementing tools of the comprehensive plan. So the comp plan outlines very broad goals, very broad policy directions, and then it's your zoning and code that will really implement the principles or the spirit of the comprehensive plan. and that's where the details will be found. But you'll see as we go through the goals and policies and objectives, they're still very, very high level. So they provide a framework for how you may want to update your zoning and your code. Yeah.
And on a boots on the ground perspective, and Erica can help direct how that works in the city of Sherwood, when someone comes in for a planned unit development where they have a large piece of property that they want to adjust and modify the zoning within their large parcel of land, do they not also use the objectives that we have in our comprehensive plan that we're going to be voting on to help mold what their planned unit development looks like when it is not specifically in compliance with the existing code?
Yes, they can definitely use our comprehensive plan to, justify any modifications that they're using for their development that don't typically meet our standards
Or
in our development code.
right, or if they want to do a zone change,
That's the big one.
that's the big one. Whenever someone wants to change their existing zoning to something else, these are the policies that we definitely start looking at as a basis to say if it's feasible in addition to other things. But a zone change would trigger us looking at these policies in front of you.
Thank you. It's hard when you're new and trying to fit huge, big pieces of a puzzle together when we have really tiny minutia wordsmithing that we're doing at the same time. So I wanted to try and balance the two. So thank you for the sidebar.
And then also another note that the comprehensive plan is a document of policy language, but also sometimes will lead itself to an update in your zoning map that is a reflection of the spirit or the policy direction that is set forth in your comprehensive plan. We have yet to decide through this process whether this document will essentially lead to a new zoning map or not. That's still on the table. But this is essentially the framework for what you want to provide in your community. But yeah, there's many tools to implement this.
So Anais, Commissioner Giles has a question.
Thanks
Please.
so much. So my question is about some of these 30,000 foot things, because I see on our language we want to support innovative housing types, of all these different things, and I'm certainly open to that. But when I read through the comments on the survey, it was pretty clear that the citizens want large single-family detached houses on large lots, right? It's not even like we're in the same ballpark in terms of what we're saying we want to do, and even in reading through, it seems like the citizens don't quite know, because there's some that are saying, well, we do want, we'd like to live here throughout our lives, and so we need some affordable housing and some end of life, or not end of life, but senior year, the housing I'm a few years away from, empty nester housing or something, but so I'm having a dissonance here in trying to figure out, do we do what has been identified by the citizens of Sherwood as keeping Sherwood, or do we say, hey, we've got to grow and we've got to do it thoughtfully, and so we're going to grow in these following ways, even if you don't want that, if you don't know that you want that, kind of a thing.
Yeah, it is a very fine line to walk between understanding the different needs and preferences of the community, but then also with the understanding of growth management and affordability and House Bill 2001. So, in the face of change that is imminent and, not something that anyone can stop, how do you best plan for change? So this is definitely a fine line to walk. And yeah, it's hard, hard work.
Okay, and there's one other question on this. Is there one of the comments that I saw several places at least was the idea that they don't want more affordable housing because it will decrease their property values. And I'm not a real estate agent, but is there any actual proof behind that? Because it seems like when I've bought houses, they always are trying to pull comps of houses that are similar to mine, and so I don't know that I would be compared with a townhome or something. And so again, I'm just ignorant on this fact, but is there actual evidence that it will decrease your property value to have more affordable housing in your community?
I'm no housing expert, and I would not be able to say whether or not that is the case. But just thinking more broadly about the purpose of a comprehensive plan is you want to make sure that you have addressed the whole spectrum of things that will arise over time in the next 20 years. So the comp plan is not where we answer questions about property value. It's where we answer questions about aspirations of the future. So I kind of go back to this. It's at the very, very high level. Like, what are our aspirations for the future? So it comes down to some tools like your zoning and your code that really start hashing out the complexities of how you meet these aspirational goals. But I don't have an answer for your questions about property values per se. Another thing I'd say is, there's a lot of different knowledge bases and levels of expertise and understanding around issues like this, which is kind of why we had an online survey, but we also had more in-depth interviews with folks that are deeply connected to trends in the market, but also trends in community needs and welfare and things like that. So this is, your job as a planning commission and our job to support you in trying to, where is that line between what are our aspirations for, what we hope to be able to provide to our kids and our grandkids in the next 20, 40 years. And then the next work or phase of work comes down to how do you make it happen, which is through your zoning and your code and other kind of formal land use processes that the city enacts.
I would add one more comment. The tension that we have in Sherwood is between what the community desires and the requirements that are placed upon us with Metro and the state. So oftentimes there's tension there in the community believing that we have self-rule or we should have a better control over our own code, and the Metro and the state having requirements that we have to incorporate into our document. So we are having to balance that also. So
right,
and that will probably come up 100 more times between now and the time we recommend something to council.
And Gene, might I ask, because it's my first time dealing with, I guess, public survey on this kind of stuff. When you read through these responses, you get a bunch of diametrically opposed answers, and an entire spectrum. There's very, there's fringe cases when guys are complaining about T111 siding, and I mean, how do you aim for like the 80th percentile and try to shoot for that's your bulk data? I mean, how do you derive? I'm an engineer, so for me, there's a lot of feely stuff here, so I'm having a hard time parsing this because you can have it cheap, faster, or cheap, faster, done well, but one of two of the three, right? I mean, sorry.
Yeah. So just a quick note: these surveys that we are putting out are not at all statistically valid in any capacity. Really, a survey is essentially an exercise or a tool for us to get a pulse on the community. So we're really just taking this information, we're reading through it, we're digesting it, we're synthesizing it, and then trying to craft something that is a reflection of all the variety of different perspectives and information we're getting. We obviously see through the online survey that we're getting everything from really, really broad ideas and aspirations to very minute personal conundrums, or so it's not a statistically valid survey. It's not meant to act in that way. It is simply just our opportunity to get a pulse on some of these questions to help direct our thinking. So I know that it feels like there are multiple little pieces kind of all out in the atmosphere, and we're doing our best to just get the broad overall feeling and spirit of all of these different things that we have out here, and connecting them to language that pushes us forward into the future.
And this is where the Planning Commission comes in and can help balance what consultants here, you may have a group of people that says, hey, everybody in my soccer group, we all need to sign up for this. And if we happen to be talking about parks, the weighted conversations are all going to be about how many soccer fields we need, versus if we were doing a Parks and Rec and we happen to hit into a skateboard group, our weighted information would be skewed based on that. So as a commissioner, that's one of the tasks you have to weigh, is feeling of the community, not just 10 respondents and we got 9 people saying skateboard park versus soccer fields. So it becomes very difficult, and I know the consultants lean on the commissions to help balance those two things.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And the information that we provide you is just extra information about what we're hearing, how we're synthesizing and thinking about that information, how it aligns with your current priorities and council goals, but then also how it aligns with where this community needs to be in the next 20 years if it, wants to achieve, principles and priorities of equity or affordability or access to schools and great parks and all the great things that Sherwood has. So it's a lot of synthesis of information. It's a lot of listening, and it's a lot of just trying to understand where this information is coming from and why, and how to connect all of the dots. So yeah, we do definitely rely on you to help us navigate that line.
Gotcha. Thank you.
So with that in mind, I'm just going to share with you the draft policies that were pulled together, beginning from the work through the housing needs analysis that is very recent, and what we've heard and where we've gone. So policy number 1 is always planning to have a 20-year supply of suitable land for Sherwood to meet housing needs. This is a statewide requirement, is to always have a supply of land to meet housing needs. The following objectives you have here are a combination of what you already had in your existing comprehensive plan, but then also adjusting some of the language. So this is about identifying opportunities to address any land deficits shown in your housing needs analysis. So just a little note about your housing needs analysis. Accommodating future growth that is going to happen through annexation of areas within the UGB, or to bring in urban reserve areas. Ensuring that the city has enough land to accommodate Sherwood's projected share of regional household growth. This is another kind of legal objective, essentially. Just the role of a regional share of housing, and then finally maintaining a minimum overall density of 6 units per acre, which is a carryover from your existing comprehensive plan. Maybe I'm thinking folks might have lots of comments or questions on all of this. I'm thinking we should run through all 5 policies so that we get a good picture of all the different corners that we're working within, and then we can start flipping back and just making sure that we have everything covered, or if we're missing a key idea or key concept. The policy number 2 is about infrastructure. So it's about planning for infrastructure development to support residential development. So the objectives here are about continuing to coordinate capital improvement planning to ensure infrastructure availability availability on residential land, and to also continue to pursue funding for needed infrastructure. Continue to develop infrastructure across the city to support housing, ensuring the availability of water, wastewater, and also improving transportation access. coordinate population and residential growth planning with the Sherwood School District to ensure that land is available for new schools as needed and that infrastructure can efficiently be provided to new school sites. So this is really trying to match housing development with infrastructure planning, funding, and development as well. Policy 3, maintain the quality of existing neighborhoods and ensure that new neighborhoods fit with Sherwood's character. So objective number 1 is ensure that existing neighborhoods benefit from access and connection to trails, parks, open space, and any amenities as they are built in new neighborhoods. Encourage infill development in areas where there's already shopping, parks, transit, and other major public facilities and services, with a focus on opportunities in the Old Town District. Objective 3, ensure that housing is of a design and a quality that's compatible with the neighborhood in which it's located. And then the final one is reduce the negative impacts of traffic, noise, lack of privacy, etc., through compatible site and building design, buffering techniques, varying densities and types of residential land use, design features, etc. Policy 4, this is about providing opportunities for the development of a range of housing types that are affordable to current and future households at all income levels, as described in the Sherwood Housing Needs Analysis, to maintain Sherwood's high quality of life. So objective here is identifying opportunities to increase residential development and balance the housing supply through removing or lowering barriers to development. Support innovative housing types, but not limited to townhomes, cottages, courtyard housing, etc., and extended family and multi-generational housing. Support housing that's affordable to Sherwood's residents and workers at businesses in Sherwood, especially housing options for first-time home buyers, new families, the elderly, and persons with disability. Support home ownership opportunities in multi-dwelling housing by encouraging the creation of condominiums, cooperative housing, limited equity cooperatives. Provide opportunities for development of low-income housing, such as rent subsidized housing and other low-income housing developed by nonprofit organizations in areas or focused in areas that already have good access to jobs or transportation, schools, and supportive services and amenities. Policy 5, foster complete neighborhoods that provide housing choice, serve daily needs, and are walkable, connected, safe, and integrated with the natural landscape. So the first objective here is utilize the tools of concept planning, master planning, the plan unit development technique to foster flexibility, creativity, and innovation in how land is divided, how the siting of buildings, and the provision of transformative community amenities such as trails and open space. Ensure neighborhoods are designed in a manner that incorporates the following principles. So here we have a set of neighborhood principles. So this goes back to cultivating a variety of housing types, create walkable neighborhoods that are nestled into their surrounding landscape or that respond to the natural features of the landscape, provide safe and effortless connectivity to things like schools and parks and commercial centers, enhance existing natural assets and integrate green spaces and parks, and then enhance Sherwood's small town character and historic core through human scale development that is accessible and inviting to all. Objective 5.3, make use of the density transfer as a mean of preserving open space and developing recreational areas within a single development. And then the last one is promote housing and site design that supports conservation, enhancement, and continued vitality of areas with special historic, architectural, or cultural value. So that was a lot.
Could you go over the term density transfer? I wasn't familiar with that term.
Yeah, Erica, do you want to describe what density transfer is? Just a little planning FYI, or do you want me to? I can also talk about it.
Sure. No,
yeah.
I can talk about it. So density transfer is when you essentially take some of the density or all of the density on a specific lot or area, and you can like either transfer that density and go up like vertically, or you're moving that density so it's like out of like natural like feature, like natural riparian areas and whatnot. So you're not impacting an area.
Can I do it in layman's terms?
Yes, do it, Jean, because
so if you have 10 acres and you're allowed to put 6 units per acre on it for your density goal of 60 units, and if half of the property is wetlands that we want to preserve, you could move all 60 units to half of it. So your net would actually be 12 units on the side that you're developing and no development on the wetlands that we're preserving.
Okay, thank you.
And then I see that
Justin has
other commissioners that have questions. When we go through this, I was, I think for tackling this, for questions, if we could tackle them by policy.
Sure.
So if Lori has 2 questions, are they related to a specific policy or a general question?
Question on policy 4 and then one on policy 5.
Okay, so we'll start with 1. Justin, do you have questions on policy 1 or a general question?
Mine is on policy 4 as well.
I have almost rewritten 4 and 5, so that'll be fun when we get there.
I do have a question on policy 1.
So on policy 1, go ahead.
And forgive me, I got the echo of former Commissioner Cottle in my head. On objective 1.3, through regular monitoring, do we need to define that more, or it seems like every time we've had sort of nebulous definitions that we want to dive into that a little bit more, but that's just something that just popped in the top of my head there.
Usually that refers directly to your buildable lands inventory, which is part of your housing needs analysis work. That is regular monitoring, is just having an updated housing needs analysis and buildable lands inventory. Yeah, but it is, I mean, for you as a group to decide whether you'd like to call out the BLI specifically.
Through regular monitoring via the BLI, or is that what you're recommending?
That at least give it some type of concrete definition or term. So
okay.
What have we done in previous policies where this issue has come up? I can't recall off the top of my head. I know it seems like this has been a sort of and again, if this is a comprehensive plan, 30,000 feet, I get that. I understand that, where we don't want to lock ourselves into a 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, and then we miss it. And then people are saying, hold on. So I get that. So for me, it just seems like it's something that's popped up that I just wanted to make sure we addressed. And I'm not saying we need to change it.
So would it be regular monitoring in conjunction with the BLI updates? That way we know that it's done with that regularity. I'm just throwing it out.
I'd be happy to note that down. I'll take notes.
Okay.
Yeah, what I will do is I'm going to take these notes and then.
How often do we update BLI?
Probably when we get money.
No, actually.
That's not nebulous at all.
Sweet. Here's a quarter.
So House Bill 2003, which also deals with residential housing throughout the state, there is a need for us to go back to update our H&A pretty much on a regular basis, at least every 5 years.
And that's going to be more and more typical as well. Most jurisdictions will be updating their housing needs analysis and BLI fairly frequently. Yeah. But we didn't want to lock you guys in on like every 5 years you must be updating these documents if there's not necessarily funding in year 5, but there is funding in year 6 or funding in year 4, so.
As an aside, as the new commissioner, I don't know if Taylor cares either, but I'd love to understand the funding as it relates to the commission on this stuff. Maybe not pertinent to this conversation, but it's come up in previous ones, and maybe we have an extra 10 or 15 minutes at some point we can go into that.
Yes, Mike, I think that's a great question. And I think we're going to actually get to that topic at our next Planning Commission meeting when we actually go over the action plan.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
All right. No more questions related to policy 1 and the objectives.
Ma'am, how did we arrive at 6 per acre? Did that come from some other?
Oh, I had noted that that's a minimum requirement by Metro.
Thank you.
Going into policy 2, objective 2.1, I believe that after the and continue to pursue funding, I think that should be 2 separate objectives. Coordinating the capital improvement planning should be as important and separated from pursuing funding for the infrastructure growth.
Okay, so parsing out objective 2.1.
Yes, and making it 2 separate objectives. Anybody else have any comments on policy 2 and the objectives there?
I do have a question on objective 2.3. Mm-hmm. Coordinate population and residential growth planning with the Sherwood School District. And we know we got some bond max issues there. Does it make sense to make that more general, or maybe we say something like regional partners, or do we need to be specific to the Sherwood School District?
I don't know, but I do like the regional partners because we have had instances where water sourcing could have been an issue back in the 90s. So,
would you like to add Sherwood School District and other regional partners, or would you like to just replace Sherwood School District with regional partners?
I think it's good to have some I'm not going to say this right. Specificity.
Specificity. Yep.
Yeah.
As far as, who, or at least some type of examples of who regional partners would be. So
totally.
if it were saying Sherwood School District, we could potentially list, a few common or important regional partners.
I would also say that the school district is such a key player for what Sherwood is as a community that there's probably reason for calling it out, seeing as the schools are really important here.
And especially in regard to housing, so.
Yeah.
I might even put the other regional partners in 2.4, knowing that Sherwood School is, I don't know, schools just seems a little bit different because we can't stop growth because of schools, but we do have we have a different if we don't have water or sewer or wastewater, that planning process takes a different precedent and priority over the schools.
And Jean, also, there's also, the city is not able to collect SDCs for schools, correct?
Correct.
Do the school districts collect SDCs along with new development?
No, they bond.
Oh, okay. So that being the case, then I think it is real important that the school districts are called out specifically.
Yeah.
Cool.
And then should we add and other regional partners to that then? Or
should that be an objective 2.4?
Yeah. I'm looking to Annie's and Erica, whichever way they want to roll.
Oh, I'm looking at you guys.
I'm sorry, I'm just making a note here to add it.
Yeah. I like it as
what I will do is I'll take some of these concepts or like these ideas that we're all hovering over and throw them to our CAC and our TAC and our PAT. And then we can talk about it again when we meet in October and see where it landed and then readjust if needed.
Oh, yeah, that's a really good point. I was just thinking, is this going to go back to the CAC? Because they're going to do a lot of wordsmithing on their own, too.
Exactly. So. And our technical advisory committee. So this will be seen a couple of times. So maybe what we do is we just collect these ideas and we make note of the ones that we're kind of waffling over a little bit and just see where it lands with other voices as well.
Perfect.
Okay, so let me just take that note though, potentially adding a note about regional partners in Objective 2.3 and or parsing out Objective 2.3.
Perfect.
So I've noticed this in a couple of places where we talk about infrastructure. Is that defined somewhere? Because we call out wastewater services and water services, but you know, I'm afraid that as a city or as a country even, we're getting left behind on our digital infrastructure as well. You know, and you know, bridges and all of this other stuff, right? And so, is that a part of it that's defined somewhere, or is there a reason why we call out water and wastewater services?
That's a great point. Water, wastewater, transportation are kind of your classic infrastructure categories. But we can certainly consider suggesting other types of infrastructure or calling that out more specifically as well, like digital infrastructure. Yeah, definitely. Wastewater, sewer, yeah,
I would just say, I mean, it's one of those things where if you're putting in electricity and wastewater and water, it is pennies to put in fiber at that point. You know, it is very cheap to do it at the beginning, and it's very expensive to do it at the end. And so it's almost like, why not have that in there as we build out the infrastructure?
And it's required in our code already,
okay,
so we want to ensure it maintains in there. Yeah.
It's gonna say
we were calling that out, but yeah.
You're right. It is odd.
Okay, I'll make a note about potentially adding either an objective around digital infrastructure or at least calling it out more specifically in one of the objectives.
And I'm not even necessarily, I'm more seeking to understand here. I don't know that it has to be called out. If it's already a part of our code, I mean, I just know that it's important to me personally. So I don't need it really actually called out. So unless other people think it should be, I saw the water and wastewater, but didn't see the other. So I just didn't know if it was defined elsewhere.
I'm going to chime in real quick here. If this ever came to a vote, I'd have to recuse myself because I work for Verizon, and building out infrastructure is where I first spent a lot of time in front of other cities' planning commissions and things along those lines. We have to look between what's a natural monopoly from a utility standpoint and what's not a natural monopoly from a utility standpoint. For example, with fiber, you can have Comcast and Ziply and all of Verizon and everybody else, sharing conduit and running through a neighborhood. But you're not going to see multiple electrical companies running wires. You're not going to see multiple sewer companies running. So there's no competition there. They're hence a natural monopoly. And so that's where, again, I don't want to influence that because that'd be probably wrong of me considering what my employment is. But I just put that out there for the rest of the commissioners to think about, the differences between a natural monopoly and competitive landscape.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Rick, and I know that this. I mean, it puts. Honestly, it's a tight spot that we're in because we haven't, in our country, we haven't just said, hey, that's part of our utilities. And I know that there's a tremendous amount of money that goes into it. So I don't know if the answer's, 5G towers everywhere or what, but it seems like other countries have figured this out with their digital infrastructure, and it's a draw for businesses and remote workers and everything else, that it feels like it will be much easier for us to be able to say, hey, people are close to their jobs if we can say we are, remote worker friendly, I guess.
Well, may I just briefly, my wife works for DHS and she works with the poorest of the poor, and they view internet and cell phones in the same scale as electricity and water. So they view those as critical services because we don't have landlines anymore, and to have any kind of functionality, you generally have to have some kind of access to the internet for various things. So I would say that socially, regardless of the bigger picture of America and whatnot, that at least the government of Oregon, DHS, sees that as on the same as heat, water, food. They see those services as required for safe children.
So for our purposes, would it be better to use the phrase infrastructure through our objectives and at the top of the policy to define infrastructure as all utilities rather than doing apart. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. You guys can wordsmith it and then let the
Sure.
CHC tear it apart for us.
Yeah, no, I'll take note. There are definitely like pros and cons of listing out specific infrastructure in the comp plan and then talking about it in the development code or not. It also may be that the types of infrastructure may morph and change in 20 years as well. So it wouldn't be great if we listed some things but not everything that comes up, you know, like vehicle charging stations or what other kinds of, I guess that's the electrical grid. But yeah, I will note this and see what comes of the conversation here.
Erica?
Oh, I just also wanted to mention that our next comp plan theme, or one of our next comp plan themes, happens to be infrastructure,
right,
as well. So a lot of this conversation that we're having, you know, we'll ultimately probably see in that comp plan chapter.
Yeah, that's a really great point. That's a great point. We'll probably have ample opportunity to really parse out all those different categories of infrastructure in that chapter itself. So it'll be just a question of if we want to reiterate it in this chapter as well.
And having worked from a point of conflicting policies and goals, if we're going to hit infrastructure hard in the infrastructure category, having policies here that point to a strong infrastructure section may reduce the conflict, where we have part of our code says one thing and the other part says another thing. So as we go through the process, we might find really good languages here, and then we end up just pulling it into the infrastructure so we don't duplicate or conflict. Thank you.
All right, moving on to policy 3. This is about quality of existing and new neighborhoods, or existing neighborhoods, yeah.
So I, two comments. One is an objective 3.5 that doesn't exist yet, which is design standards. When I read those comments from citizens, one of them that stood out to me, and I've been an advocate for ensuring the quality of the development in Sherwood. The way it was stated by the citizen was the more robust or the more dense the development, the more defined the design standards would be. And so if you could make that sound official and formal and an objective, that's so we have very good quality single family residents because that's what we build and that's what the need is for here. What I'm very afraid of is, and it was also another comment, was the soulless buildings that we have in other communities where the higher density townhomes and apartments have no architectural features. And so I think one of our objectives should be to ensure the design standards in all zones. And then in objective 3.4, I don't know what's the last 3 words. I don't know what special construction standards are. So I think we should figure out what special means in this case.
I think it refers to high efficiency or energy saving construction standards.
So we should probably use that instead of special, because I didn't know what that was. And in that objective, it's really long, so I don't know if we want to split it, but the negative impacts, the thing we hear every single time is parking. And that is not a negative impact that's listed here. And if we could call that out, that is a huge problem. So.
And I also had a comment on objective 3.1. I'm reading this to mean if you build a new trail in a new neighborhood, it will not be only for the residents of that neighborhood. I will be able to go and run on that trail as well, or is there some is there some sort of a like my neighborhood doesn't have any trails in it, and so I'm just wondering what does that mean?
Yeah, I mean, essentially the spirit here is that as new neighborhoods are being developed with all of these amenities for existing neighborhoods that are next to new development, if there's a new amenity or trail going in to the development next door, that it somehow connects to the sidewalk system that you have on your street.
Okay.
So just ensuring that as all the nice shiny things show up in these new neighborhoods, that there's still an ease of access to those amenities as well for your existing neighborhood, so that all neighborhoods are lifted up by investment.
Yeah, where I live, probably 4 blocks away is a private dog park. You have to have a key or a combination to get into, and it's for those high density apartments area over there. And I thought that was a little unusual, because before they developed that, I would take my dog over there and let my dog run around. Right, it was just a big open field. So I don't know how that's good for the community. As a for that particular location, would have better to made that into a parking lot, quite frankly. Right, but.
Yeah, exactly. So this is just about ensuring that investment is accessible to all.
I have a question on Objective 3.4 as well. And if maybe an example of a negative visual aesthetic, to help me understand, a little bit what they mean there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that maybe the back of a Costco building or something like that, or maybe something that just isn't visually pleasing, like the back walls of a shopping complex. Maybe landscaping needs to go there or something like that. But essentially just trying to really minimize any negative impacts that you might find like that.
And so maybe a group to ask the everyone here is, it came up earlier, 5G antennas. Would this be something citizens can argue that's negative visual aesthetic? I don't want it. It's not happening.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, that could definitely be called out. It would be, I don't know if anything could necessarily be overturned by this one piece of language necessarily, but I guess that could be a negative visual aesthetic.
Well, I mean, who's determining that? I mean, don't we have code to prevent that right now?
We do, yeah.
Okay. I definitely want 5G antennas. So make them pretty if you have to, but or stick them in the top of a tree somewhere. I don't know.
Yeah.
Hey, so back on the 3.1. Well, actually, sorry, Rick. I don't know if we got to an answer on yours.
Yeah, we did. I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. So on the, this is an interesting thing, and Mike just brought this up. The idea that an apartment complex has built a dog park. I would expect that if an apartment complex builds a clubhouse or something, that's available just for the people that have housing in that thing, right? I mean, that's not a neighborhood amenity.
Well, this dog park is across the street and not attached to the actual facilities at all. That's the insane part about it. I would get it if I was going onto their property, but it's literally just, you're on a sidewalk, there's a park there, and there's a gated dog park right amongst the park and the paths.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But that's private property, right? That's not...
That would have to be my assumption, otherwise they couldn't gate it.
But I just, so I wonder, where's the dividing line, right? Is it, when a neighborhood goes in that we say, hey, you've got to put the parks in, are those city parks? Are they private park? You know what I mean? Like, is this idea of a neighborhood amenity also feels nebulous. I'm hearing the voice of Commissioner Cottle as well, and I never served on the council with him. So are neighborhood amenities defined somewhere as city-owned or city-maintained or something?
Erica, can you describe how open space requirements work in different, just in general in the residential zone, and probably in the PUD is probably more where this is going to be used?
So I can definitely address those.
Oh, hi, Joy.
Okay,
Hi,
so
Joy.
hi. So with a plan unit development, it allows for a lot of flexibility for the developer to utilize the land as best possible. But one of the requirements is a 15% open space requirement. So with that, even in a typical subdivision, we require 5% open space. If the parcel is big enough, let's say Middlebrook subdivision that's going to be coming in Brookman, off of Brookman, it's 145 unit subdivision. That particular subdivision actually has one gigantic open space that is going to be owned by the city, but it is a community park. They've designated it as a community park, but it's also consistent with the Brookman concept plan that there needed to be a community park in that area. In addition to other open spaces that are Cedar Creek along within that entire subdivision. So then there's also these little tiny subdivisions like Copper Court off of Saragino by the new, or by the schools, Edie and Laurel Ridge schools, where they have a little pocket park. And that little pocket park is their 5% requirement. And it is typically is owned and maintained by the homeowners association, where they typically would have it sometimes gated, and it is maintained again by the CC&Rs regulate that, and the private property owners.
So on the 5%, I'm trying to distinguish between the 5% open space that's required as it becomes a neighborhood amenity. When this objective 3.1 is applied, they become available. Would someone be able to say that it would become public access? What's the delineation between public and private access? And are we encouraging or trying to drive that homeowners associations pocket parks then become public access? Is that what this is?
So typically in regards to, who actually has access to those pocket parks, right? Let's say your daughter invites a friend over that lives down the street, but not in the same subdivision. Someone's not going to reject the neighbor coming over to play in that park. They typically have public access easement across them so that anyone can utilize it. But at the same time, just so that you guys have some background information, they're typically privately owned. These pocket parks are privately owned and typically maintained by the homeowners association. So like your example in regards to the dog park, it being fenced off and gated, it is technically, usually if it is gated, usually it is maintained by the homeowners association, but I'm pretty sure there's probably a public easement, access easement, so that anybody can actually go in there.
You can't. It's locked.
Oh, okay. But if they didn't lock it, and if it was just gated per se, and it wasn't locked, there should be some type of, because that is what we ask, is that we get some type of access, because it is, again, for open space.
Right.
Interesting. All right. So any more on our policy 3?
Yeah. So going back to 3.1, are we concerned by using the word ensure? Because that, for me, presumes that it's a requirement. So where we ensure that the existing neighborhoods benefit from access and connections to neighborhood amenities, but if there's no guarantee that residents of that neighborhood aren't going to get access. So I don't know. I'm just.
You could encourage.
I would prefer encourage over ensure.
How about where possible?
I would rather have it say encourage.
Okay.
Just, I
like encourage.
Yeah, not ensure.
Great.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
I'll move to policy 4. So this is around affordable housing specifically. And homeownership opportunities, yeah.
Lori, did you want to go with your question first?
Sure. Because I have a feeling Jean's gonna has a lot. I just kind of had, I mean, one that really called out to me was 4.5. It says provide opportunities for development of low-income housing. Does that mean that we're required to do that? And if so, is that based on HB 2001, or can we word it differently so that we're not required to provide those opportunities? Is, I guess, the question.
HB 2001 doesn't have any language about affordable housing. It is primarily around a variety, like different housing types.
Right. Okay.
Providing opportunities for development. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, you can definitely soften the language to not require providing opportunities for development.
So this is Julia. I'm just going to chime in, and just a reminder that you guys are so used to dealing with code and rules and evaluating applications based on specific rules. The comprehensive
My everyday
plan
job.
The comprehensive plan is just a little bit higher level, and so it provides a roadmap that will then help you develop rules and apply rules. So, I mean, I think your comment is valid, but I just want to kind of have you guys all keep that in mind, that there's nothing that you guys are doing in the comp plan that is thou shalt. It's all sort of you're trying to develop standards from which to then develop code and zoning.
But we're developing code and zoning based on the policy and the objectives, right? So
yes.
I would hate really to have a comment, I mean, like the prior one, right? Ensure, kind of, someone could go back to Jean's point earlier, someone could go back and say, hey, well, objective 4.5 of policy 4 says that Sherwood is supposed to provide opportunities for low income housing, and you're not. Why, so I would soften the language a little bit if we can.
Allow
for.
Yeah. Allow for opportunities, or
sure.
Just something so that it's not.
Would encourage be another good use here, or would allow for be preferable?
Encourage sounds like you're pushing them that way. Allow for sounds middle of the road. It's an option, but not a force. I don't know. That's my opinion.
I like that.
Yeah.
Great. So allow for opportunities for development. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you. That was the only one that really kind of struck me.
Sounds good. Yeah.
That just hit. Yeah. The 4.5 just hit me as there's a magical place in Sherwood that I've never heard of that has access to all these jobs, transportation, open space. Like, I want to find out where that place is. That seems like a magical place to live.
So my comment and question was with 4.5 as well.
Please.
And I'm the question regards such as rent subsidized housing and other low-income housing developed by nonprofit organizations. Do we know what type of tax structure nonprofit organizations benefit from in Oregon? Are they tax exempt? Are nonprofit organizations exempt from property taxes?
So your question is, are 501c exempt from property taxes?
Yes, because my understanding in other states is that they are, and I don't know if that's state specific or if that's just throughout the country.
I think for Section 8 housing, it might be federally across the country, like if you're developing Section 8 housing.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm no no expert in this.
So I would really like for us to know for certain, especially in this case, and so my comment regarding this, in my prior experience, with when a nonprofit developer develops housing, their status as a nonprofit developer exempts them from property taxes. They're not exempt from parcel taxes. However, the bulk of funding for required services comes from property taxes. So when you have an organization or an entity as a nonprofit developer providing housing, what you essentially get is an influx of residents who require services without the funding to support them, and that obviously seems to be a huge issue. So if we can get clarification on that, if that's the case in Oregon as well, if it is, I'm not sure necessarily what we should or shouldn't do about it. I feel at the very minimum it should be at least noted that if we're going to call out opportunities for nonprofit organizations, I feel like it needs to include like an asterisk stating nonprofit organizations per their 503 status are exempt from property taxes, etc.
Erica, before it comes back to the Planning Commission, will you be able to vet that out for us as it goes through
Yes.
the CAC, the TAC
Yes.
process? That's a bit of a research project, I think.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So, any other questions before I ask a couple of questions? Anybody else have anything on policy 4? So, are we required to use the phrase affordable? Because I know that at the CAC, that was a phrase that was not desired, that they went to a lot of effort to ensure that the vision statement did not include the word affordable. So I had thought titling policy 4 would be that provide opportunities for development of a range of housing types that are at various price points for current and future households.
We could change that to say attainable so that it's a reflection of the vision statement.
Okay. Because, I mean, that was obviously something that we went around and around at the CAC on.
Right, I remember.
Okay.
That's a really good point, Gene, because like affordable has so many different definitions or applications. Yeah. It's just, and then it has a lot of baggage with it too. So
it does. And then, as described in the Sherwood housing needs analysis, I didn't know why we were specifically calling out that document in the comprehensive plan.
Yeah, I mean, I think the housing needs analysis is essentially the backbone of the housing chapter. And then in the policy, we talk about housing types that are affordable to current and future households at all income levels. So those will change over time, and those will be reflected in your housing needs analysis. So it's really just an impetus to continue looking to your housing needs analysis to establish what are these different income levels and what are these households.
So on that point, because when we read the housing needs analysis, the attainable items or the attainable houses within Sherwood are at a different level than Washington County and City of Portland based on the average income in the City of Sherwood. So are we saying we're going to come up with some crafting that enables our community to look at our income to drive what attainable means?
I mean, that's what your housing needs analysis does.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that's what we're saying.
Right, but I think, Gene, to your point, that's not all income levels, right? We're not saying if you make $10,000 a year that you that we're going to provide housing for you that's affordable or attainable. You know what I mean? Like income levels is rough.
Yeah, because we can't guarantee a housing type at every income level.
At reasonable income level.
Yeah.
Well, I would, yeah, or at many income levels, or varied income levels, or
I like that.
Well, this one's going to be difficult. I think if we, as described in the Sherwood Housing Needs Analysis, helps define that we're looking to attainable goals within our community as it exists.
Would the flip side of what everyone's talking about there being, to say it sort of rudely, is if you're a part-time minimum wage worker, we don't want you to live here?
No. I guess that you're right. That's hard.
Well, but I think that essentially what you're saying is, if you want to live in this type of community with this kind of open space and this kind of amenities, there is a certain level that you need to be making in order to have it be affordable to live here, right? Because like my daughter, for instance, is just possible. And she can't, she's got to commute up to Portland every day and blah, blah, blah. It doesn't make sense for her to live in Sherwood. It just, there's nothing we could do about that. Her job, her friends, her school is all up in Portland. It doesn't make sense for somebody like that to live here in Sherwood. So I'm sensitive to it, but I also realize we're not going to be the best fit for every person.
And on your point, I think it's I think the way to look at it is not being insensitive, but I think it's just being realistic or practical.
So, to me, it seems like our housing should have the opportunity for affordable apartments where 2 or 3 people can share rent, sort of like what we probably all did immediately after college.
Right.
And so it seems like there's room for that. But is this where people are necessarily going to want to do that? Again, back to and I'm sorry if I say Tyler or Taylor.
That's right. Taylor Giles is how it is.
Okay.
That's all right.
Back to your point, that and while that housing arrangement makes sense in certain communities, Sherwood doesn't necessarily have the colleges or universities where that type of housing arrangement is more conducive to that, as well as a denser city environment that has the type of jobs that kind of necessitate that. So while I see the need to provide the opportunity for it is important, the need for it is kind of missing from the other end as far as either school or work.
We wouldn't count Walmart in that.
Yeah. So I mean, can I just interject briefly? I've been pondering what was Sherwood as a new commissioner, right? And I've lived here for 20 years, and I think what you're all trying to delicately get around is the drivers to live here are it's a throwback to a previous time in terms of the community, right? We have fantastic community events, safe streets, we have fantastic schools. You don't live here generally for locality to. You can buy a house over in Bethany or Beaverton for less than it costs to live here. You live here for very specific reasons, and I think that people that are at the stage of life would be more suited to live like in an inner southeast or something where they could be near Hawthorne and they could have that social life. They can rent the apartments. They're close to max. I mean, I paid, a TriMet tax on a Sherwood-based business for almost a decade, and at that time a bus came out down 99, turned on Ray Rogers and left, right? I mean, or Walton Sherwood. And I paid the same taxes if I was in Beaverton. It's ridiculous. Yes. So functionally, I mean, it's an elephant in the room here, but we all live. I mean, people come out here, and in my neighborhood, you put a house on sale, and you could get a sign in the ground, and it was gone. And it's still, families want to move here. It's for family people, and I realize that's a long-term problem as we are aging populace and looking at all those studies we received recently. But it's sort of like the thought on the trailer parks and these other stuff that aren't sanguine to this particular topic right now. But there's definitely a reason and a general, 80 percentile people moving out here for these very specific reasons, right? I mean, that's kind of it.
Right. And no matter what we do to try and make a house more affordable, it doesn't change how much we have to pay in bonds and in taxes because we have created our own expensive way of life because we bond for parks, schools. We have all these SDCs that we have to have these amenities, and to build an apartment complex, the owner of that apartment complex is going to have to pass those along. So it makes any type of truly affordable housing without subsidies challenging at best. And the only way to go, and I guess that's, as a commission, we look at this and we say the way that we could make more affordable housing is to reduce the number of amenities that we offer the community, get rid of the parks, get rid of the open spaces, reduce our school bond. And I have never heard anybody in the city of Sherwood say they want to get rid of their amenities. And so
so that's where we get the higher density by these smaller individual properties like the cottages and such, where
correct.
You can raise your tax basis. People can have more. Go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Justin.
No, but that's exactly what we're looking at. And if we're doing that, I'd like having these opportunities spelled out in the comprehensive plan if we are looking towards Sherwood West as the opportunity to allow for affordable density in a place that's going to make sense, where we have the infrastructure of parking and transportation. We can't have density over by the fire station or Old Town because, like you said, there's not a bus that's going to go up Willamette and over Pine Street to pick up a bunch of people that are building ADUs over there. It's not going to happen. It becomes unattainable. So.
Go ahead, Justin.
I have two additional comments that I came to mind as reading through policy 4 a little bit more. In 4.1, this kind of dovetails off of what Jean was just talking about in the section, or further in, removing or lowering barriers to residential development. I have issue with, because generally that means, something that's, when I read that, what I correlate that to is, in part of the stakeholders, part of the stakeholder comments from developers was that the more design standards you have, the more expensive your residential development is. And as a resident, that makes sense to me, and I'm okay with that for different reasons. So I don't know if that's something that we necessarily want in there, or want in there in the way that it's worded.
I hear what you're saying. I had challenge. I underlined and circled and said, I'm not sure how to make it work. And I was also going to try and lean on the CAC to see how it came out of that committee, because it does.
I mean, can like, what if removing or lowering barriers were just taken out? Identify opportunities to increase residential development and balance the housing supply.
Yeah,
I guess you guys don't know how you're doing it. Housing supply for residential development.
Yeah, take that out. Barriers probably relate primarily to just clear and objective standards in your code.
Okay.
But we can just simply take that phrase out.
Okay. And then in objective 4.2, I don't know if we need the word innovative there. My concern with it is that, again, I don't know, not wanting to be stick in the mud or anything, but generally something new or wild is what I relate to as innovative. And I don't know if that's necessarily something that we want to see within our neighborhoods necessarily, but I feel like if you take out innovative, the objective still stands, and to me stands better, support housing types such as, but not limited to, et cetera, et cetera.
So, and again, I actually liked the word innovative just because so here's the thing is that I feel like townhomes, most people have an idea about. Cottages and courtyard housing and ADUs are probably a little bit less familiar. And so part of me is trying to figure out, it feels almost like a PR problem to have. I'm okay if we take out the word innovative, but I want to say, hey, look, if I were to show you a picture of this type of housing, you'd say, yeah, that looks great. Bring it into Sherwood. If I just say the word townhome, you might think, maybe not. You know what I mean? But
no, I definitely agree with you. But and I was just thinking, I'm okay with taking innovative out because we've listed all of the other types of housing that it's referring to, and I like that being more specific.
Okay.
In that sense, but I totally agree with you as well. Because people can have hangups or their perceptions of what one of those types of housing are, but there's a wide range of what those types of housing can be.
Will those types of housings be innovative in 20 years?
Probably not.
Probably not. But
I think this was also maybe a reflection of the fact that, as HB 2001 comes into play, providing opportunities for a variety of housing will need to show up in your code somehow. And for the stuff to be good and look good, there may need to be some creativity and flexibility in how that is built. So yeah, I think that just was an adjective to just give a little bit of leeway into trying to absorb the change that's going to happen, to at least try and make it flexible so that it fits.
So then why not say support a variety of housing types instead of, because I agree with Justin on the innovative, just kind of, I don't know, maybe that's because he and I both come from Tech Valley.
Great, so we can remove innovative, support housing types such as?
Support a variety of housing types.
yes. And then one more wordsmithing on 4.3, change especially to including, because in none of the community comments were people wanting to focus on first-time home buyers. Everybody was focused on single-family residents. So
yeah, that actually came directly from the stakeholder interviews, but I'm happy to just change that to including.
okay. Oh, it did especially?
Yeah. All of that, objective 4.3 is new because of the summary of the stakeholder interviews. But I think that we can definitely just change the word to say including, because we're still listing out what those different groups different groups are that have unmet needs.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Does anybody else have any more policy 4? Okay.
All right, I'll move to policy 5. So this is new, and this is about neighborhood principles and complete neighborhoods. The idea behind developing new complete neighborhoods.
I have a simple question. I just didn't understand on objective 5.2 section E, human scale development. What's that mean?
That actually is Gene, this is a Martin language here. As an architect, human scale development is development that I guess is not imposing or feels soulless or designed in a way, I guess, that makes you feel like you're walking across a moonscape or something like that.
And
but that's a great point. I can flag that for.
I have no problem with it. I just didn't know what it meant. That's all.
Sure. Yeah.
I think we also use human scale when we look at design elements in Old Town, because you want the top and the bottom to be not much bigger than a group of people walking by, so you don't feel like you're walking past a monolith instead of, you don't have big blank walls. You have human scale sized stuff.
No giant art installations.
On A, it says reasonably increase. And I don't know if this is a requirement. Cultivate a mix of housing types that are designed in a way to reasonably increase density. And it goes back to not hearing, I mean, maybe people want to increase density now, but what I'm used to hearing is maintaining the minimum required density and enhance our neighborhood character.
Yeah, maybe we just remove that and say cultivate a mix of housing types that enhance neighborhood character.
Where are we at right now again? I remember last meeting we covered, you know, the minimum is 6 dwelling units per acre, but we're at like 7 something or 8 something.
Yes.
Yes.
7.8 or something.
Mhm.
7.7, isn't it?
So when if we were to leave that in there, are we increasing from 7.8 or increasing from 6? I mean, what's?
I think it's moving past 6 where feasible and possible.
Yeah, I'm with Gene. I've never heard anybody say that they want more density. I think it's maybe if we are going to leave it in there, responsibly increase density or something. Like, I don't know what reasonable or responsible is, but you know, if we wanted to remove it and just say, you know, because if we feel like we're at the density that we'd like, we would just, I don't know. I feel like that might be tying our hands a little bit.
I think it's good without it.
Yeah, dropping it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can do. Yeah, I'll make note of that.
All right, I see Lori's comment. Commissioner Holm, I think this is your last meeting with us, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
I have a big goodbye to Lori. We usually have, at least staff has in the past, brought treats for our last meeting when a commissioner is retiring or moving. So all we can do is wish you an electronic farewell and best wishes, and hopefully you are able to come back and visit us.
I will come back and visit, and I will be keeping my eye on y'all. Make sure you're doing things right. So.
All right.
But yeah, thank you, everybody. And so, Anise, I think you saw my note, is just that ensure. I don't, you know, anyway, I've already stated how I feel about that word. So,
Absolutely.
But thank you so much for all your hard work on this.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a pleasure working with you, Lori. I wish you all the best in your new adventures.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Take care, Lori.
Good luck.
All right. So, where did we end on? Are you just removing reasonably increased density?
Yeah.
Or
yes.
at least maintain required, or just drop it completely?
We're going to drop it.
Yeah. And then
the developers are already going to try to reasonably increase it as much without us having it there.
And that was my fear, is that when we put language like that in this document, someone comes in for a zone change, they're going to point to your policy objective 5.2 says you want to increase density, so I want my zone change from medium density to high density so that I can, you know, help you comply with your comprehensive plan. And that
I can reasonably increase my density.
Yeah, and their reasonably may not match our community desires. So, and then on 5.1, I was not sure what a transformative community amenity other than trails and open space.
I think we're maybe referring, so referring to trails and open space, thinking about regional trail systems like the Tonquin Trail System and other kind of regional amenities that are receiving a lot of investment and could be particularly, I guess, transformative or impactful in terms of elevating the quality of life in Sherwood and across different neighborhoods. I'm thinking primarily, about Sherwood West and the natural features that exist out there and the connections of the Tonquin trail system and just ensuring that you incorporate those things in the development of places like Sherwood West so you don't miss out on those kind of big ticket items. And also they are, I guess, the word basically just describes the type of things you can get when you do really large scale master planning, thinking specifically about Sherwood West.
Okay. I'm going to go back and follow on the CAC and see how that goes through that process.
Yeah, absolutely.
See if they have comments. We have so the new commissioners, this process involves a citizen advisory committee and a technical advisory committee. And I think there's 14 or 15 CAC members. I'm just guessing, something like that. And they are very engaged, active, and thoughtful people when it comes to this wordsmithing. So it's been a pleasure to work with them, and I know that they will do great justice to this document. So some of this, we'll see it again, but they will have a chance to transform it itself. So
yeah, so I'm taking notes of all of these comments and edits, and we'll be working through that with our CAC and just kind of keeping a running list of what happens where, so that nothing falls through the cracks.
Keenan, are you saying that the TAC and the CAC will make this a transformative document?
I am.
Of human scale.
Of human scale, yes. I love it.
Sorry, that was just a really bad dad joke.
Yeah, well, most of it in here are probably Judd's. Did you get the 5.2 change from Lori? Did you make note of that?
I did, yeah, I got that down.
All right, any other, did I miss anything on 5? Oh. Yay.
Yay.
All right, I think that's it. As always, please email Erica with any additional thoughts or ideas or comments you may have, and we'll keep track of that when we meet with our CAC next.
When's the next CAC meeting?
So it's coming up. I've got a couple more slides, but we're done with the draft policy language, so I'll just kind of wrap us up here. So there's 2 things that we just want to talk about before we close out. The first is about the manner in which we take public comment on this draft housing language, and then also just flagging that we have a vacancy on our project advisory team. So the first item is generally for each of these comprehensive blocks, what we do is we push the draft policy language out to the public once we have something in some shape or form to get kind of a sense or a pulse on where this language lands with the community. Oftentimes we have pushed it out via a survey that is published on the 2040 website. We have gotten a lot of feedback, and rightfully so, that these surveys are long and difficult to work through. It's a lot of content and language and text to read through. It is certainly not the layperson's Sunday newspaper read, maybe for some. But so basically our question to you, we've been toying with the idea of maybe publicizing or disseminating this information in a slightly less formal way. Maybe, for example, having this in a Word or a PDF that's available online, and then simply having like a comment box where if somebody does read through this and has specific comments to make on certain policies or objectives, they definitely have the opportunity to do so, but don't necessarily have to be scrolling through a survey and scoring each goal and policy. I don't know if we've been getting extremely like a lot of quality feedback when we've done that. But this is something that we were hoping to ask you what your thoughts were on this, just given the objective or the purpose of having this information publicly available, and also providing the opportunity to provide comment if someone so wishes.
So as a product manager, this is what I do all day, is get feedback on products. And one of the things that I've found that is very useful is to break it into smaller chunks. And even if you're not giving everybody the whole survey, if you can get, a statistically meaningful group of people to answer, a fifth of the questions or whatever, and just breaking it up into, hey, this, setting expectations at the beginning. This should take less than 2 minutes of your time. It is important to the future of Sherwood. And having 5 different surveys that are going to different people, or they're, we're able to advertise in app, and so it's a little different, but I think that that's key in breaking it down, and especially going over it with a just a lay person to look at the wording on it, because as nice as it is to read through all of this stuff, I mean, I've had to Google a number of terms that I think everybody who's been on this planning commission probably takes for granted that people know what they mean, but I've never heard some of the words used in the way that they're being used. So that would be my feedback on that. Break it up.
I think that's a really good point. Like trying to avoid buzzword, which I think a lot of times like exercises like these really try to take advantage of. But I think when we avoid them, it's just a much clearer document.
So are you saying to maintain the survey aspect still for sharing the draft housing policies and objectives?
Yeah, but I guess I'm not sure what what a PDF, a fillable PDF with a comments bar. I don't understand how that's different.
Yeah. No, it wouldn't be fillable. It would simply just be putting the information online, and then having a comment box or something online where folks can provide comments if they wish. Before, we've had it in a very structured survey, like a Survey Monkey, where maybe Erica, you can share examples of previous surveys where there's a Likert scale and people identify the degree to which they support or don't support certain policies and objectives. We've done that, but then have just gotten feedback from Planning Commission, but also our PAT and our CAC, that they're just really onerous, and not many people are taking them.
So what I do in mine is, like, I don't say, hey, give me a scale from 1 to 10 on a question. I've got a 1, 3, or a 5, right? I give them 3 options, or I give them a smiley face, a straight face, and a frowny face. And part of it is because the difference between a 6 and a 7 creates mental fatigue on people, that they go, I don't know, is it a 6, is it a 7? Why I put a 6 on that last one? And so there's just some of those basic learnings that we could do, and then just say, hey, what are the 3 most important things to get out of this, and write it as if we are a marketing team. So that's the problem, is that I come at it from a marketing and product background, and not a legal, hey, this has to be done to conform with these legalities. So could you do an executive summary kind of thing to say, hey, here's the 3-sentence executive summary, and then, by the way, here's all of the other stuff if you want details?
Taylor, can I even break it? So I work, I translate a lot of nerd to salespeople all day. That's kind of part of my job. And I tend to break this stuff down kind of like your PowerPoint here, where you've got you translate it to lay terms, and then below in sort of italics, whatever is the actual language you're translating with the feedback. And it is very like, here's 3 points. What do you think of these? to Taylor's point, right? So
Yeah,
it is a layman breakout that's very simplified, and then there's the underlying piece that's explaining it without they can, if they want to read it, they can. Might be better for the feedback because it's.
Yeah, we've done that very similar for past surveys. So maybe my suggestion is that, Erica, why don't you share examples of these past surveys just so everyone understands what they have looked like in the past, and then we can continue on that path and continue creating the surveys in that similar way, maybe with some focus on just minimizing our scaling systems or things like that. But maybe Erica can send that out, and then if you have any edits or suggestions on how to modify that to make it a little bit more digestible, we can take those into consideration for the next survey.
Having both done the surveys and help try to figure out how to make them
right
work.
Jean, please.
they're horrible. Not that you guys have done anything wrong. I mean, you had the PAT team trying to help you do something, and it's difficult when you have. So if we were to put up policy 1 objectives 1 through 4 and ask the people how important are these to you, they're going to go, well, I don't know. And am I supposed to scale 1.2 is more important than 1.1 and 1.4 when all 4 of them are required by state and metro? So my first comment would be policies 1 and probably 2 are almost required language, and even as a commission we hardly had any comments. So focusing on 3, 4, and 5, if we do, when we do the outreach, we can state here they are, but not have the in-depth conversation on the first 2, or even omit them completely because they're kind of the minimum required that we have to have in our plan. And then I'm not saying that this, what we tried to accomplish in the last survey that were done where we were doing the housing surveys, where we were getting those last graded charts, those worked out really, really well. Those worked out
and that's
super
a totally different survey because it's got a completely different purpose. The purpose the purpose of this is to just have this information publicly available. Okay. It just is that maybe the format in which this is being disseminated is not exactly aligned with what the objective is of having this publicly available. So yeah, that is, we can definitely continue trying to modify the format or the tool to put this information out. But it may be that we've come to realize that the survey tool is not maybe the right format given the objectives or the purpose of what we're trying to do here.
Right, and I agree wholeheartedly. The very last survey was fun and interesting to look at.
Because it had a different purpose, right?
Yeah, but the last survey that had to do with objectives, 1 through 35 or whatever there were, it was onerous.
And really, we're trying to remind us that the purpose is to have this information publicly available. It's not necessarily where we're collecting things to inform. It's the end of that iterative process of this is everything we've heard, and now here is the information for you to review. Essentially, it's a review and comment.
And that's maybe how you do it. I like how you just said that.
Sure. Okay.
Here are the 5 policies and the objectives, and have a comment section below each of the policies.
Yeah.
Then they get five comment sections.
Something that's running through my head right now is a philosophy called the tyranny of or. It's like we have to have this or that. We can't have both. What if we were to put a front page on this where it's here's the bullet points, here's your comments. Hey, you want to learn more? Click here, and now they get the full survey.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds great. That's a good idea.
Nice.
Because I guess what problem are we trying to solve? We want more community input, more educated citizens on what we're doing.
I don't know if it's necessarily more community input, but I think it's for whatever engagement we are receiving, we're trying to smooth it so that it's not so onerous for those that do wish to engage in this material.
So one other comment I would make on that is that if we don't intend to do anything with their comments, to Gene's point, hey, if that's the legal language we have to comply with, then I don't know that I want to accept comments on that. And I would just state it up at the top. Hey,
Right.
we have to do this by state law, or else we've got to declare independence and prepare to secede from the union here, right? I mean, there's not a lot of options on it, and so I almost want to say, yeah, we can't do anything with your feedback, and so.
Yeah, I mean, I think we still definitely, though, want to provide some sort of avenue to collect comments, just because it's the right thing to do, and I think that we definitely would heed feedback as we get it, and consider it as part of the full package of information that we have at hand. So yeah, I think we could definitely do a hybrid approach where we just present the information and then just give some very simple comment boxes where people can type in their feedback if they have any on any of the policies and objectives, and then also just note that there are some things that are just legally binding.
Yeah, and maybe that's the description in Policy 1. Many of the items in Policy 1 are required by the state, versus Policy 5, which is, your opportunity to provide input to how you want to see neighborhood requirements.
Sounds good. Okay, we will continue working on that. Erica will send out a draft of the surveys we've done in the past, just so people can put their eyes on it and provide any additional suggestions. And then Gene, we will continue this conversation through our PAT conversation as well. So it is not over. And that being said, there is a vacancy. Erica, I don't know if you have anything to say about it other than we have a vacancy, and speak to Erica.
Will the CAC review this before it goes to survey?
They generally don't. When we come to the CAC, we come with all of the information. So all the public comment that we got on, so the draft language, and then the feedback that we get on any of the draft language.
Okay. I'm going to figure out the order that you do all these in by the time you do the 6th block, or maybe by the end of the 6th block. So, and then I just want to reiterate that the public outreach has been, Annie's and the staff has had Herculean workload to try and do this, because we would have normally had the opportunity to have open houses and work sessions and roundtables with the members of our community. And so having to do this outreach electronically and social distancing has been, we're inventing the wheel, and we're putting a lot on everybody to try and figure out how to get community engagement that is meaningful, that we can, at the end of the day, in a year, and when we're voting on this, feel that enough of the community has had an opportunity to provide feedback that when it goes to hearing, we know that our community isn't seeing it for the first time. So thank you very much for all that you've done to try and engage as many people as you can. And 1,000+ people on this survey says you're doing something right on it. So thank you.
Well, thanks.
Gene,
I appreciate it.
I think if everything we're going through those previous exercises or channels, the amount of response would be, because normally it's very minimal. So, yeah. You guys are doing great, but this is also, providing potentially a better means of engagement. So,
yeah.
Anise, can I ask you mentioned this vacancy a couple times. Are you looking for one of us on the commissioner panel to join this? Are you
Erica,
lacking?
can you describe what the vacancy is? I'm not sure. Good question.
Yes. So our project advisory team, we go to them. We seek input on our public engagement process. Through
and who are they made up of, Erica?
2 commissioners and 2 city councilors.
Okay,
and so
we're seeing a commissioner.
Yes. So Lori Holm was a commissioner that was been on our PAT. So we have a vacancy left by her leaving.
So when I say that the previous survey having to do with policies was difficult and onerous, I own that. I was part of the problem there, that in our effort as a PAT to make a better document for people to be engaged, we made an unmanageable document. So I own that with the other members of the
Lori.
PAT. What?
Trial and error. We're all learning.
We're all learning the new process, but boy, we wanted to make it a super document, and it became a superly big document. So
yeah, and I think that and because of that, I think it's really important to continue to remind ourselves of what the purpose is of what we're trying to do.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I think we have a comment here.
It was for Taylor. Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt the flow.
No, that's okay. I'm gonna, by the end of this, I'll get our comprehensive plan down to a one-pager with a picture.
It's trifold.
That would be nice. Well, no, truly though, Taylor, if you are interested, please communicate with Erica so we can fill that spot and get us going.
And so what it usually entails is the four of us on a call before the different stop points in there.
Yeah, it's usually about twice for every comprehensive block. So we talk once as a group before we launch any engagement for each comprehensive plan block. So we kind of talk about our strategy and how we might want to, who we might want to reach and how. And then we come together again just before the launch of the online survey just to review it. And it's not reviewing content, it's reviewing process and strategy for engagement. So it's not, it's less focused on the content of what we're doing, but rather the community engagement strategy.
In this example, we brainstormed what type of people we wanted to reach out to.
Right.
What groups of people, you know, who are the key players that we want to make sure got interviewed.
Yeah, hey Gene, why don't I reach out to you and give you a call, and we'll chat about timing and things like that.
Okay.
Great. So yeah, just lastly, just a couple notes here on next steps. So the next step is to take this information, basically turn around another draft of these housing policies and objectives, put it out for public comment or public dissemination. And then we're going to be meeting with our CAC and our TAC on September 16th, where we're going to be presenting the draft that was put out for public comment, along with all of the content you just got tonight. They have not yet seen. So we've got a lot of material to review with them on September 16th. They'll be getting everything you got tonight, plus kind of a running list of the iterations of the draft policies for this block. And then we take their comments, we work another draft, and then we go back to you and City Council for a work session to kind of show our work and show what came out of these different iterations. And then at the same time, while we're doing that, we're also going to be kicking off our next comprehensive plan block, which is titled Coordinated and Connected Infrastructure, which is a carryover from the vision statement. So starting in September, we'll start pulling together the background information that we use to direct our work for this block. So we'll be kind of ready to go and meet with our CAC and present that new information to them probably within a month or a month and a half of the next time they meet. Any questions?
Not so far.
All right, well, that's all I have on my end. Erica, do you have anything you want to close out with, or yeah, I'll leave it over to you now.
I don't have any staff announcements, but Jean, I'm going to leave it up to you if any commissioners have any announcements that they would like to make.
You're on
You're on
mute.
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 Okay, sorry about that. We do have H&A comments are due to Erica by Friday, correct?
Correct.
I know I have not turned mine in yet, so you may not get them. I may have to call you and tell you what they are.
And that's fine.
Because I'm terrible. I don't recall seeing and I may have gotten lost, the project to date, all the previous blocks, draft goals, policy, and objectives. I think you were going to send that out, Erica. Did you?
Oh, yes. So the action plan that we're going to be talking about on September, it's our next planning commission meeting.
Mm-hmm.
On September 8th. So you will get that packet on September 1st, and it will have all of the goals and policies from all of the last blocks that we've gone through.
So I didn't.
All the themes. You haven't missed anything.
And I haven't lost it.
And
Yay.
you haven't lost it.
I haven't lost it. So the first 3 blocks, the draft goals, policy, objectives, and action items will be to us on September 1st.
Correct.
Phew. Okay. That's great. All right. Does anybody else have any other announcement before we adjourn the meeting?
I have a quick crazy request, and I don't know if it's possible or not. It's for a question for Erica and staff. Is one of the things I did today, I mentioned it for those of you that were on the call early, is I drove the entire city, every neighborhood I could find in Sherwood. I drove today in about an hour and a half. And something in my head, when we talk about affordable housing, that I wanted to see is sort of like a Zillow scrape of what the housing looks like by lot across the entire city of Sherwood. So we can see our pockets of houses that sell between 100 and 200 and 200 and 300 and 300, all the way up to like maybe $900,000 and cap it out there. So we can look at a map of our city and really understand where the affordable housing is, where it's not, where the gaps are. I think that can help us, do our jobs a little bit better. So it's a crazy idea. I don't know if that's feasible or possible, but it was just something that, I like to see data, I like to see information. I thought that'd be helpful for us.
I think you can, because you can already zoom in and out of Zillow and pull that. I mean, it might be possible, Rick. I mean, if you ever look at Zillow and you zoom in, you can see houses that have sold in your neighborhood for XYZ, and as you zoom out, it still shows the numbers of nearby corresponding houses.
Yeah, I'd like to see a color. Yeah, and that's what I've done that. Obviously, there's a lot of challenges with that, but a map that really has a color coding, so you don't have to see individual numbers and pockets and things like that, so we can really get a sense of what the neighborhoods look like. So a crazy idea, but just something I was thinking about as I drove through the neighborhoods and saw some areas that I haven't been in for a while.
Yeah.
No, that's great. We could probably work on something like that. I don't think it'll be too hard. Yeah, let me give it some thought.
It's a great idea. All right. Thank you very much. All right. Well, if there are no other comments or questions, we can adjourn. Hearing none, then we are adjourned. Thank you very much.